a champion, undefeated and untouchable, once hailed as a national hero. But when war engulfed his homeland, silence was his only response. From celebrated icon to political outcast, his fall was as sudden as it was shocking. Why did the man who conquered it all retreat from the country that made him? Was it strategic silence or a betrayal in the face of war? The truth behind his silence will leave you questioning everything. Khabib Nurmagomedov, one of the most dominant UFC champions in history, once held a revered status in his homeland, Russia. His rise to stardom transcended sport, becoming a symbol of national pride. Yet, as quickly as he rose, Khabib's public image plummeted, leaving many to question how a national hero turned into a political outcast. What led Khabib, once a favorite of President Vladimir Putin and the Russian people, to flee his country and distance himself from his past? To understand the trajectory of Khabib's fall from grace, one must revisit the early years of his career, which was marked by national pride and political harmony. In 2018, after an overwhelming victory over Conor McGregor, Khabib became a household name not only in the UFC but also in Russia. He was celebrated as a sports hero and a symbol of strength, embodying the ideals of a proud Russian nation. His relationship with President Vladimir Putin solidified his status as a powerful figure in the country. The turning point came in 2022, when Russia invaded Ukraine. What followed was a political and social shift that turned the country into a battleground not just for territory but also for ideological control. Celebrities and public figures, once free to express their opinions, were now pressured to publicly support the government's actions or risk losing their status. Khabib, who had long been seen as a national icon, found himself in a precarious position. While Russia's government looked to enlist its public figures to rally support for the war, Khabib remained silent. His refusal to make a public statement on the ongoing conflict in Ukraine was seen as a betrayal by the Russian government, who expected unwavering loyalty from their most influential celebrities. The silence, initially viewed as neutral, soon became a source of anger among both the government and the people of Dagestan, his home region. Khabib's silence marked a dramatic shift in his relationship with the Russian government and the people of Dagestan. Once celebrated as a national hero, Khabib now found himself under intense scrutiny. The government's discontent with Khabib's inaction was swift and punitive. Khabib was hit with massive tax claims, the seizure of his assets, and public backlash. His failure to support the war effort led to a complete transformation in how the public viewed him. He was no longer seen as the beloved champion, but as a man who had abandoned his country during a time of crisis. The people of Dagestan, once his strongest supporters, felt deeply betrayed by Khabib, with protests erupting across the region, especially among the women who protested against the forced conscription of men into the military. Many turned to Khabib, expecting him to use his influence to speak out against the mobilization. But when he failed to do so, public opinion turned sharply against him. Fans and fellow fighters who once admired him now questioned his loyalty to his homeland, and Khabib faced enormous challenges in this period of public backlash. His silence on the war, along with his growing estrangement from his homeland, left him vulnerable to attacks from both sides. Russian propagandists and TV hosts criticized him publicly, accusing him of betraying his country. The authorities also launched an aggressive campaign against him, seizing his assets and businesses, including his family home in Dagestan and his car collection. Amid the challenges, Khabib continued to enjoy respect and adoration in the Muslim world, particularly in the UAE. His faith and values resonated strongly with his new audience, providing him with an unexpected haven. Although he was facing turmoil in Russia, Khabib's status in the broader Muslim community remained largely untarnished. This support from the Middle East allowed him to secure citizenship in the UAE, offering him a way out of the turmoil in Russia. As Khabib found refuge in the UAE, the situation in Russia continued to escalate. The Russian government began to tighten its grip on dissent, and Khabib, once a prominent voice for his people, found himself caught in the middle of a political maelstrom. His decision to stay silent on the war led to mounting pressure from both the Russian government and his own people. Despite the mounting tension, Khabib's efforts to maintain his silence were met with harsh consequences. His assets were seized, and his businesses in Russia were shuttered. The Russian government made an example of Khabib, showing that even a national hero was not immune to punishment if they failed to toe the line. Khabib's silence, while perhaps well-intentioned, only added fuel to the fire, leaving him isolated from both the Russian government and the people of Dagestan. Khabib's silence finally came to a head when Russian officials accused him of tax evasion, claiming he owed millions in unpaid taxes. This event marked the official collapse of Khabib's relationship with the Russian government. The tax claims were accompanied by the seizure of his assets, including properties worth millions of rubles. It became clear that Khabib's failure to support the government had turned him into an enemy of the state. The aftermath of this event was chaotic for Khabib. He faced legal action, and his family's home was taken from them. The once celebrated hero of Dagestan was now being treated as a criminal, forced to navigate a maze of legal battles and mounting public criticism. The confusion over his stance on the war only added to the chaos, as both sides began to view him as a symbol of disobedience. In the end, Khabib made the difficult decision to leave Russia. The UAE offered him a new home, and he was granted citizenship, securing his safety and freedom. However, the damage to his reputation in Russia was irreversible. Once seen as a hero, Khabib was now an outcast, forced to rebuild his life in a foreign land. Khabib's departure from Russia marked the beginning of a new chapter in his life. In the days following his move to the UAE, Khabib continued to maintain a low profile. He refrained from making public statements about the war in Ukraine or his reasons for leaving Russia, opting instead to focus on his business ventures and personal life in the UAE. His silence on the war remained a point of contention, with critics accusing him of avoiding the issue rather than confronting it. Khabib's legacy as a champion remains intact in the world of MMA, but his political and personal legacy in Russia is forever tainted. His refusal to take a clear stance on the war in Ukraine led to a loss of support from his homeland, and his relationship with the Russian government has been permanently damaged. Khabib's story serves as a cautionary tale about the personal costs of political silence in a world where allegiances are demanded and loyalty is tested. Khabib's legal troubles in Russia, including the tax claims and asset seizures, were a direct result of his failure to support the war. The ethical implications of his silence are still debated, with some arguing that Khabib had a moral obligation to speak out against the war, while others believe that he should have been allowed to remain neutral. The Russian government's punitive actions against Khabib also raised questions about the extent to which political dissent is tolerated in the country. Khabib remains a respected figure in the world of MMA and continues to enjoy a significant following in the Muslim world. His record as an undefeated champion speaks for itself, and his impact on the sport cannot be denied. However, his political legacy is far more complicated. His silence on the war in Ukraine and his eventual departure from Russia have left a lasting mark on his reputation, particularly among his fellow countrymen. Khabib's story has had a ripple effect on the relationship between athletes and political regimes. His experience highlights the delicate balance athletes must navigate when their fame intersects with politics. It also serves as a reminder of the consequences that can arise when public figures fail to take a stand on major issues. Khabib's rise to fame was swift, and his fall from grace just as dramatic. His journey from national hero to outcast reflects the complex intersection of sports and politics. His silence on the war in Ukraine and his eventual departure from Russia changed the course of his life, forever altering how he is remembered by the public. Khabib's legacy as a fighter is secure, but his political legacy remains a point of contention. His story will continue to resonate in the world of sports and politics, serving as a cautionary tale for athletes caught in the crossfire of geopolitical conflicts. As Khabib moves forward with his life in the UAE, his story serves as a reminder of the pressures faced by public figures in politically charged environments. His silence, while initially seen as a neutral stance, ultimately led to consequences that reshaped his life and career. Whether Khabib will ever return to Russia or make a public statement about the war remains uncertain, but his story is far from over.